1. Is in written, recorded, graphical, or other tangible form and marked proprietary, confidential, or with a similar legend denoting the discloser's proprietary interest therein, or 2. Is in oral form and identified by the discloser as proprietary or confidential at the time of the oral disclosure, with subsequent confirmation in writing, or 3. Is of apparent proprietary or confidential nature, unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am informed by the Commissioner of Police that at the time when the officers of the National Audit Office met with the officers of the Police Department as part of the audit exercise, a number of queries were raised on various aspects of the Safe City project. They were informed of the nature of the mutual non-disclosure agreement and were provided with information that could be disclosed. Moreover, a copy of the clause 3 of the mutual non-disclosure agreement, which relates to the non-disclosure of proprietary information, was handed over to them. At that time, they did not raise any particular issue on that agreement, as they were satisfied with the replies to their queries. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is worth noting that in the management letter from the National Audit Office, dated 15th of January 2021, on the Safe City project, there is no mention of any issue related to the mutual non-disclosure agreement. In fact, at paragraph 10 of the letter, the National Audit Office acknowledges with satisfaction the cooperation and assistance extended by the Mauritius Police Force to the officers of the National Audit Office. On 10th of February 2021, an exit meeting chaired by the Deputy Commissioner of Police, responsible for the administration, was held with officers of the National Audit Office to discuss issues raised by the Director of Audit for the financial year 2019-2020 for the Police Department. During that meeting, the officers of the National Audit Office drew attention that the lease agreement for the Safe City project was not made available to them. The chairperson explained that it would not be in order to provide a copy of the agreement due to the clause of mutual non-disclosure under the terms and conditions of the agreement, as I stated earlier. The members were informed that the advice of the Attorney General's Office would be sought on this matter. Mr. Speaker, sir, in fact, I am advised by the Attorney General's Office that the powers of the Director of Audit are set out in Section 110(2) of the Constitution as follows, and I quote, 110, Director of Audit, subsection 2, the public accounts of Mauritius and of all courts of law and all authorities and officers of the government shall be audited and reported on by the Director of Audit, and for that purpose, the Director of Audit or any person authorized by him in that behalf shall have access to all books, records, reports, and other documents relating to those accounts. Unquote. The duties and powers of the Director of Audit have been made more explicit in the Finance and Audit Act as follows, and I quote, Section 16, Directors of Audit, Duties of Director of Audit, subsection 1. The Director of Audit shall satisfy himself, A, that all reasonable precautions have been and are taken to safeguard the collection of public money, B, that all laws, directions, or instructions relating to public money have been and are duly observed. C, that all money appropriated or otherwise disbursed is applied to the purpose for which Parliament intended to provide, and that the expenditure conforms to the authority which governs it. D, that adequate directions or instructions exist for the guidance of public officers entrusted with duties and functions connected with finance or storekeeping, and that such directions or instructions have been and are duly observed. And E, that satisfactory management measures have been and are taken to ensure that resources are procured economically and utilized efficiently and effectively. Subsection 1A, the Director of Audit shall carry out performance audit, the duties and powers, the extent to which a ministry, department, or division is applying its resources and carrying out its operations economically, efficiently, and effectively. Subsection 2, the Director of Audit shall not be required to undertake any examination of accounts partaking of the nature of a pre-audit and involving acceptance by him of responsibility which would preclude him from the full...
Honourable Prime Minister, there's no need to read the whole Finance and Audit Act to us. You can 15 or 16, 17, 18, 19 clauses. We know the Finance and Audit Act. If you can just stick to the reply, please.
Already, and I already ruled this is not a point of order. The Minister has...
Mr. Speaker, sir, I am not reading the whole of the Finance and Audit Act. I am referring to sections, and the Honourable Leader of the Opposition should have some patience, because he will understand why I am referring to that section, because I'll come to it later on. But he jumped the gun and
Please continue.
So I was reading that section, the nature of a pre-audit and involving acceptance by him of responsibility which would preclude him from full criticism of any accounting transactions after those transactions have been duly recorded, unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, further, of particular relevance is Section 17(1)(d) of the Finance and Audit Act, which provides for the referral to the Attorney General of any question regarding the interpretation of any enactment concerning the powers of the Director of Audit. Section 17(1)(d) provides as follows, and I'm only going to quote that section: powers of Director of Audit. Subsection 1. In the exercise of his duties under this Act, the Director of Audit may, subsection D, lay before the Attorney General a case in writing as to any question regarding the interpretation of any enactment concerning the powers of the Director of Audit or the discharge of his duties, and the Attorney General shall give a written opinion on such case, unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is through the exercise of his powers and duties that the Director of Audit is able to place before the Public Accounts Committee his report so as to enable the committee, pursuant to the National Assembly Standing Order 69-2, to examine the audited accounts showing the appropriation of sums granted by the National Assembly to meet the public expenditure. The Director of Audit appears to have overlooked the need to accordingly seek the advice of the Attorney General's Office on whether the constitutional and statutory powers of the Director of Audit in relation to the documents and records pertaining to public expenditure could be validly curtailed by a mutual confidentiality clause in a contract between government department and a contractor. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the light of what I have already stated, the question of disciplinary action does not arise.
Mr. Speaker, may I firstly advise the Prime Minister that we sent the PNQ at 8:30 in the morning, and it was to your office, and it has been substantially unaltered. So I don't understand why it took 1.5 hours. except for withdrawal of free words. Mr. Speaker, am I to understand that this confidential agreement was made between the police under the Prime Minister's office and Mauritius Telecom, a company of which the majority of the shares are held by government? Is that the case, that this agreement is between government and a government company, and it has in fact thwarted the right of disclosure even to supposedly to a director of audit? Isn't there a huge conflict of interest here?
Put your question.
That was the question. Am I to understand that it is a company owned by...
Don't repeat. If you have already put your question, don't lose the time of the chamber. Honorable Prime
Don't
Minister,
mislead me.
Is finished? Yes. Well, this is a contract between the Mauritius Police Force and Mauritius Telecom. So, what is the issue? I don't understand what is the issue.
Next
Issue,
question.
I'll ask the Honourable Prime Minister, and this is the question, whether he finds it normal that the CEO of Mauritius Telecom is also the special advisor at the Prime Minister's office, and he himself, therefore, advised on the confidentiality clause and included the confidentiality clause in the agreement between a government company and the Prime Minister's office through the police.
Not at all, Mr. Speaker, sir. The confidentiality clause has been put in the contract because there are security reasons which are involved. That is why this confidentiality has been put. And it is not the first time that there is a confidentiality clause in such a contract. I think the Honourable Leader of the Opposition knows when he himself has been in previous government, I think he should remember cases where confidentiality clause or non-disclosure clauses have been included in such agreements.
I always personally avoided this, but I will ask the Prime Minister whether he knows that it is unprecedented in the history of independent Mauritius that information which by right by the Constitution should be provided to the Director of Audit is denied to him under a so-called confidentiality clause, even where it is between a government company and the government itself. This is the first time, unprecedented. You haven't replied to questions in Parliament, that we know. But the Director of Audit has a constitutional right to information which has been denied. Are you aware that this is unprecedented, Mr. Prime Minister, Honourable Prime Minister?
For the third time, Leader of the Opposition.
Well, I have replied to this question, Mr. Speaker. There is, on the one hand, obviously the duties of the National Audit Office, who has to ascertain, to inquire first of all and ascertain that whatever money is being spent in a correct manner. And in this case, there is, I have mentioned, a non-disclosure agreement which the police force has prevailed itself to say that they cannot give or they cannot communicate the agreement to the audit officers. But they have always been prepared to respond to queries that were submitted to them by the National Audit Office. So the issue is, it is a legal issue. On the one hand, there is this clause, which the police force says that they are bound by it. On the other hand, the audit office wants to get access to those documents. This is the legal issue, and this is why I've said the NAO should have requested for advice in order to see what is the way forward.
My information from the NAO differs considerably from what the Prime Minister has told us in the House, in that I was told that the information was requested as early as September, 6 months ago. Now, Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister not agree that there is absolutely no need for the Director of Audit to worry our good friend, Mr. Mr. Honorable Manish Gobin, who nobody trusts anymore anyway. He has no need to have access. He has no need to have...
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, I am on my feet. Don't make any comments. Go directly to your question.
Why can't I make comments? Now, Mr. Speaker, the Constitution of Mauritius, Section 110, is crystal clear. You read it yourself, Honorable Prime Minister, that the Director of Audit shall have access to all books, records, and reports. Shall have. So there's no reason, we did not agree, that there's no reason to trouble our good friend, Mr. Honorable Manish Gobin.
You made your point. Let the Prime Minister reply.
Yeah, first of all, let me say, I don't know whether all the opposition members do trust the Honorable Leader of the Opposition. That is another question. But anyway, I have said, well, you want to put another question before I reply?
Leader of the Opposition, help me.
So, Mr. Speaker, sir, look, I have said in my answer, the Honorable Leader of the Opposition is saying 6 months ago they have requested for information. It could be 6 months, it could be even earlier than that. But it is a fact that on the 15th of January, the NAO writes to the Mauritius Police Force and doesn't mention or doesn't make it an issue that there is a non-disclosure agreement which the police force has prevailed itself for not communicating the agreement. And I said in my answer, furthermore, if there was such an issue that they were not able to get information, I said, the police, according to my information, there were meetings with audit officers, questions were being put, queries were being asked, and the police had answered and has communicated as much information as they could. Would the NAO then write to the police at that time, 15th of January, to say that I take this opportunity to thank you and members of your staff for the cooperation and assistance extended to the audit team in the conduct of the audit assignment? It would have said, police force, there is an issue. I am not satisfied because I have not been communicated with the agreement. Now, I will ask the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, have a look at the comments that have been made by the NAO. He says, the constitutionality clauses, again now referring to this legal issue, that he is not being communicated with the agreement. He says the constitutionality of clauses in contracts that deprives the Director of Audit of access to public records for audit purposes is questionable. He himself is not sure. He's saying it is questionable. That is the reason why, in my answer, I have said there is provision under the Finance and Audit Act. Wherever he is not sure or wherever he is not satisfied that he is not, according to him, getting the required documents, he can request for an advice from the Attorney General's office. And then let me, since I would say it's a bit, let me put it that way, I'm disappointed by the comment of the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, because when we talk about the Attorney General's office, it is the Solicitor General who gives advice, not the Attorney General. You don't know. No. It is the Solicitor General. I tell you it is the Solicitor General who gives advice.
But don't interrupt.
But if you don't know, you don't know. So,
this is 40 times you interpret.
So that is why, Mr. Speaker, sir, I say I'm not here to say whether one is at fault or not. I look at it of course, we do take very seriously comments that have been made by NAO, but in this case, he himself, he is questioning whether it is legally in order or not. So he should have sought advice. He would have been provided with advice, and then he would have carried on with his duty as per the advice that would have been tendered.
Is the Prime Minister allowed to repeat answers? Mr. Speaker, I like to tell the Prime Minister this. I like to ask the Prime Minister this. Does he agree that he himself is admitting that it is unprecedented that information has been denied to the Director of Audit because it is necessary to go for legal advice because there is no precedent. For the last 50 years since independence, the Director of Audit, a sacrosanct institution in our democracy, has had access to every single rupee that is spent by government. Does he therefore agree that it is unprecedented by his own saying that we now have to go to the AG, who nobody believes is independent anyway?
Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, I have not, Honourable Leader of the Opposition maybe doesn't understand when I answer. I have never said that it is unprecedented. That is your interpretation. Fine, if you want to interpret it that way. I have said, and probably the memory of the Leader of the Opposition fails, in previous governments in which he has been senior minister, there have been agreements, contracts, which have been signed, whereby there has been confidential clause or non-disclosure clauses. And of course, that could apply at that time and not this time. So I'll leave it for people to judge. And I can give you an example. Again, let me say, I don't see anything as if exceptional or surprising. If the NAO finds himself, as he stated, that it is questionable, the constitutionality, that is, he doesn't know whether, according to the law, he has the powers or what are the powers, you need to get legal advice. And there is nothing sinister, there is nothing wrong in that. We do that every day.
The fact today that we're discussing is not the fact there were disclosure agreements before, but as the Prime Minister seems to agree, that it is the first time that such information is denied to the Director of Audit. As for his point concerning the Attorney General, does the Prime Minister not know that when the Solicitor General writes an opinion...
You're putting two questions.
When the Prime Minister, when the State Law Office, this file is sent to the AG for vetting, and he has the final say. Mr. Speaker, this is my question now. I'm going to ask Honourable Prime Minister whether the denial of the lease agreement, but not just the lease agreement, and we'll come to that in a moment, and also payment documents, were not denied so that we hide the identity of a monsieur, s'il vous plaît, a monsieur Safe City. That is why all this has been done, so that we can...
Leader of the Opposition, help me. You're making insinuations. Don't go along that path. Put your questions directly.
And yes, I maintain the question, and I also see the Prime Minister. He is quoting extensively from a management letter. Will he have the courage to table in this House the management letter from the Director of Audit, for which he has quoted bits and bits of? Table the full letter, please.
I will seek advice, and if need be, work.
What advice? From the AG?
I don't work like now.
Next question, no cross-talking.
You quote something, you can't table it? Come on.
Next question.
Leader, no,
You should have asked him to table it.
Next question.
Mr. Speaker, sir.
This is your turn.
Mr. Speaker, sir. He has put a question. I must be able to answer.
There was a question?
Yes, there was. And there were comments also.
Get very cheap hearing aids. I will get you one.
No, please, don't comment. This is the last time you do that, passing comments on the chair. You're not a Superman. You're a simple human being.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I would say what a shame when I hear comment that even when the Solicitor General would have given an advice. It would have gone through the hands of the Attorney General, and the Attorney General would have, as if, corrected this advice. What a shame. This is not the way we worked here, this government. Maybe at the time when you were minister in the former government.
No comments. Next question.
Mr. Speaker, I maintain what I've said about the files going to the AG. Mr. Speaker, we talked about 19 billion rupees of expenditure for which no documents or any small extract have been given to the Director of Audit. The biggest infrastructure project ever done almost in this country. Mr. Speaker, now there were payments made. Why the Director of Audit doesn't know? This is not under any confidentiality agreement. 760 million rupees.
Question.
This is my question. 760 million rupees of money paid to whom we don't know under supposedly this contract because the Director of Audit says there were no documents available. And this I will quote, Mr. Speaker, from his report, page 166, payment vouchers and supporting documents were not produced to the audit office. Now, what confidentiality agreement protected this one so that you could not even give invoices to the Director of Audit? That is my question, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the payment vouchers for Safe City project have been effected, in fact, by the Treasury. The payment vouchers are kept at the Treasury, and the NAO was informed about that. And he obviously can get access to all those payments that were made by the Treasury.
Because the
Last
NAO...
supplementary?
Last one?
Of course.
Are you sure?
Yes. You don't...
Well, I'll stay on this one and I will have a press conference. Because,
You may
Mr.
have
Speaker,
100 questions.
as
Last
regards this one,
supplementary.
this question, the NAO says that the police department is a self-accounting department. Now, you're a lawyer, not an accountant, but you will know that the police commissioner has the duty to keep all the documents, whether or not they are paid elsewhere. Again, Mr. Speaker, are the refusal to provide the 760 million rupees worth of supporting documents to our Director of Audit, who I wish to congratulate officially, is that to hide payments, shady payments made to X, Y, Z? Is that why the payments have not been given, that the information has not been given to our Director of Audit, who is an officer of this Parliament?
No speech.
Well, first of all, on a point of order, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would wish that the Honourable Leader of the Opposition withdraws the allegation that payments have been made through X, Y, and Z. If he has information, he can come and substantiate any information he has.
Information, because information has not been provided. Have not been provided. I would welcome that the Honourable Prime Minister gives me the information. I will then, if he is right, provide all the explanations and apologies required. I am unable, Mr. Speaker, to apologize for information that has been denied.
I am on my feet. There was a point of order. I have to give my ruling, and you're giving my ruling. Allow me to give my ruling. Please. You promised to help me. Help me. There's nothing wrong to withdraw whatever allegation. And you've done it already. I thank you for that. Please.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition makes an allegation, and he wants me to prove that the allegation is incorrect. I speak as a lawyer. This is a new principle of law that I am learning. But anyway, let me answer. He mentioned that the Mauritius Police Force is a self-accounting, what is it? Is a self-accounting. I wrote it somewhere, department. Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir, I have said, let me say it again. They have obviously information with regard to payments that have been made. But the payments were made by the Accountant General, by the Treasury. And the original, all the documents are there for the NAO to check. That is why they have referred the NAO to the Accountant General. And there has been no, to me, as I don't have any information to say, I don't have any information to even suggest that the Accountant General has refused to provide the required information.
Time over. Prime Minister's question time. Honorable Nabil.
B70.
Mr. B70, yes. Mr. Speaker, sir, as from 19th of March 2020, subsequent to the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, an order under Section 3(1)(a) of the Quarantine Act 2020 was issued and which has been extended until 31st of May 2021, prohibiting the entry into Mauritius of aircraft and ships, except for those aircraft and ships as I may approve. Only cargo aircraft and cargo ships have been allowed entry in Mauritius. As regard cargo ships, I delegated the authority for entry to the Portmaster. Concerning Part A of the question, I am informed by the Director General of the Mauritius Ports Authority that a special protocol has been established by the Ministry of Health and Wellness for entry and operation of ships in Port Louis Harbour. All ships agents, in addition to the 24-hour notice of arrival and the maritime declaration of health, are required to submit to the Portmaster and the Port Health Officers of the Ministry of Health and Wellness a list of crew members and report the history of their daily body heat measurements as from the last port of call. Upon satisfaction of the health authorities based on the information submitted, the green light is granted for entry of the ship in the outer port. The port health officers go on board the vessel at the outer port. The temperature of all crew members is taken and recorded on the crew list. If the port health officer suspects infectious disease on board, he notifies the regional public health superintendent on call to initiate the established protocol, and the ship remains at outer port. On the other hand, if the port health officer is satisfied with the status of health of the crew, a free pratique is granted and permission given for the ship to enter the inner port for berthing. Officers who are required to service the ship, namely MPA pilots, MRA, that is from the customs, police and cargo handling corporation personnel, have to strictly abide by the sanitary protocol established by the Ministry of Health and Wellness, namely the use of hand sanitizers placed close to the gangway, wearing of masks and gloves, keeping social distancing, and avoiding physical contact with the ship's crew. A foot dip containing a mat soaked in a disinfectant is placed at the vessel access point. In addition, only stevedots indispensable for operations at berth are allowed on board vessels, and their number is restricted to the minimum. The ship's crew members are required to remain in their rooms during ship-to-shore operations, except for those involved in specific activities who are required to wear proper personal protective equipment. No crew member is allowed shore leave. The health of the ship's crew is followed up daily by the health authorities as from the date of arrival of the ship until its departure. As regards Part B1 of the question, I am informed by the Senior Chief Executive of the Ministry of Health and Wellness that crew members of ships calling from overseas, based on the Maritime Declaration of Health, the history of body heat measurements, and cases of crew change during the last 14 days. I am also informed that 1,276 PCR carried out on crew of ships calling from overseas since 19th of March 2020. From these tests, a total of 8 crew members were found positive on 3 vessels. One was found on board vessel Stanford Buzzard on 6th of October 2020 and was admitted to ENT hospital. Another 5 crew members were found on vessel Jasmine S on 23rd and 27th October 2020, and they were all admitted to ENT hospital. The remaining 2 crew members were found on vessel Marta Reefer on 16th of March 2021. They were admitted to Belmar Treatment Center, where they are still under treatment. The ships identified with positive COVID-19 cases were not allowed to enter the inner port until cleared by the health authorities following further PCR tests. In addition, I am further informed that on 17th of March 2021, a request was received from the shipping agent of vessel Blue Marlin, which was on its way to the United Arab Emirates for a medical evacuation of 1 crew member reported to be suffering from malaria. The patient was evacuated as requested by the shipping agent by police helicopter to Dr. Jitu Hospital. On arrival there, a PCR test was carried out on the crew member and the result was negative. On 19th of March 2021, a further PCR test was carried out and the result was positive. The crew member was immediately admitted to the ENT hospital where he is still under treatment. All personnel who have been involved with the evacuation and treatment of the patient have been quarantined and the PCR tests carried out on them were negative. Regarding part B2 of the question, I am informed that the Mauritius Ports Authority keeps records of rapid antigen tests and PCR tests for its staff and those of the Cargo Handling Corporation Limited. Since the outbreak of the COVID-19 until May 2020, 547 employees of the Mauritius Ports Authority have undergone a rapid antigen test, and all their results were negative. As from 10th of March 2021 to date, 20 employees of the Mauritius Ports Authority have undergone PCR tests. The results of their PCR tests were negative. Following the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic in Mauritius, the Cargo Handling Corporation Limited in May 2020 had carried out rapid antigen tests on 930 employees and all the results were found to be negative.
Monsieur le Président, alors que nos frontières sont presque totalement fermées, le port et sa zone restent une interface exposée à l'extérieur et donc potentiellement au virus et à ses variants. Surtout lorsque nous accueillons des navires qui ont navigué moins de 14 jours depuis leur dernier port d'escale. Et Monsieur le Premier ministre l'a mentionné, nous avons vu récemment le cas de ce marin russe testé négatif, puis positif à l'hôpital Jitu. Le Premier ministre peut-il nous dire, alors que nous sommes a priori à l'avant-veille de la première phase de déconfinement, comment se fera le contrôle de restriction de mouvement des marins dont les bateaux ont déjà accosté?
Monsieur le Président, j'ai déjà expliqué. Il y a un protocole très strict de la part du ministère de la Santé. Ce même protocole reste toujours en vigueur jusqu'au moment où on va décider autrement. Mais c'est toujours le même protocole. Et je peux rassurer l'honorable membre que s'il y a des membres d'équipage qui ont passé moins de 14 jours sur un bateau, et bien sûr, il faudra compléter les 14 jours au moins, et avec des tests de PCR à intervalles pour s'assurer qu'il n'y a pas de contamination possible.
Le Premier ministre peut-il nous préciser s'il existe un protocole sanitaire renforcé pour les navires qui nous arrivent des pays plus durement touchés par la pandémie, et je pense notamment au Brésil ou à l'Afrique du Sud?
Monsieur le Président, le protocole est le même pour tous les navires. C'est vrai qu'il y a certains pays où il y a beaucoup plus de cas de contamination de Covid-19 dans le pays. Mais qu'est-ce qui est fondamental? C'est que n'importe quel navire, bateau qui arrive à Maurice, qu'on prenne toutes les précautions nécessaires pour s'assurer que les membres d'équipage, premièrement, ne sont pas contaminés. Et je ne vais pas répéter, il y a un protocole au niveau de la santé. La santé suit les membres d'équipage au jour le jour. Et de ce fait, on essaie de renforcer autant que possible. Mais Monsieur le Président, il y a bien sûr des limites. Maintenant, s'il y a des propositions pour améliorer ce système, bien sûr, moi je suis toujours à l'écoute et on est prêt à étudier ces propositions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From his reply, the Prime Minister mentioned that the MPA has done tests on his employees. I would like to know from the Prime Minister if employees of MPA residing in the red zone have done their PCR test.
Yes. Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, first of all, what we were trying to do is to, let's say, as far as possible, employees who are in the red zone, as I say, as far as possible. If they are not required, they should not move out of the red zone. But obviously, for those whose services, because they have some expertise or they are required to work, they are PCR tested. And at this date, as I've said in my answer, that there are 20 employees who reside in the red zone who have already undergone the test and they are so far negative. But that is, I must say, it is a continuous process because we can't test and they are negative. Doesn't mean to say that they will always be protected. And I seize this opportunity to appeal to everybody that we respect, that we first of all, we abide by all advice that has been tendered with regard to social distancing, wearing of masks and so on and so forth, so that at least we make sure that we are protected.
Last supplementary.
Puis-je demander au Premier ministre le nombre de personnes travaillant au port et qui ont déjà été vaccinées contre la Covid-19?
Well, in fact, I have this information, but although it does not relate directly to the question, but I can provide the information to the House. I know that MPA workers, so MPA employees who have already been vaccinated, 230. And Cargo Handling Corporation Limited, 500. I'm told that the vaccination exercise is ongoing. And let me again seize this opportunity to appeal to those employees, because they are what we call frontliners, because they work and they are in fact more at risk, because there's likelihood that they will get closer to people who, let's say, potentially can be contaminated. So it is in their interest and in everybody's interest that they get vaccinated, obviously, as soon as possible.
Next question.
B71.
Mr. Speaker, sir, before I reply to the question, let me express my deepest condolences to the bereaved family. Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. PH has, pursuant to Section 8(1)(m) of the Immigration Act, been declared a prohibited immigrant as from 23rd of April 2019. He has not been declared persona non grata. Notwithstanding the fact that he is a prohibited immigrant, Mr. PH has been informed that pursuant to Sections 8(2) and 3 of the Immigration Act, he may be authorized to visit Mauritius, provided he applies and obtains the necessary approval from the Passport and Immigration Office prior to undertaking any such visit. He has further been informed that he should comply with such conditions as may be imposed. Consequently, any request made by him to visit the country so as to perform religious mourning ceremonies of his spouse would certainly be considered. I am informed that as at now, no such request has been made by Mr. PH. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to point out that on 29th of August 2019, a request was made for Mr. PH to come to Mauritius, and that request was acceded to. He was allowed to come to Mauritius on the condition that he may stay in the country for a period of 14 days and that he should not engage in any gainful occupation. Mr. PH arrived in the country on the 4th of October 2019 and left on 9th of October 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. The Prime Minister will recall that the reason why this person, and indirectly his late spouse, happened to be made prohibited immigrants was because he was insulted and felt insulted by the language that this person had held à son égard. Does he not believe that he is in a conflictual position, since it concerns his person that the supposed insult was directed to, and that he is, as Minister of Interior, is at the head of the body, and he himself deciding on the status of being a prohibited immigrant for those persons? And secondly, if I may, does he not regret his decision, finally, to get in between the people who are in love?
Mr. Speaker, sir, the reason that have been put forward by the honourable member is not the reason. It is. Let me answer. You put a question. You want to answer yourself.
You should help the chair.
So I said, it is not the reason, but it is one of the reasons. The main reason is because he was directly involved in major disruptions to the air services provided by Air Mauritius Limited, which had caused substantial financial prejudice to Air Mauritius and major inconveniences to passengers and tourists generally. That is the main reason, but there are other reasons also. And let me also say that the honourable member is saying that I'm conflicted. Mr. Speaker, sir, if I'm conflicted, I think I must give up my job and my responsibility as Prime Minister.
Come on with your personal comments. Any supplementary? Next question.
B72.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the Safe City project is being implemented for the purpose of safeguarding national security as well as public security. As such, it will enable the Mauritius Police Force to effectively discharge its duties under the Police Act and such other duties as may be conferred upon it under any other enactment. It incorporates a wide array of technology-driven subsystems where their integration and interoperability are fundamental in obtaining better intelligence for decision makers to be proactive and also to optimize responses. This will thus enhance the safety and security of Mauritian citizens and visitors. The project comprises of the following deliverables. A, the supply, installation, testing and commissioning of 4,000 intelligent video surveillance cameras over 2,000 sites. B, supply, installation, testing and commissioning of 300 intelligent traffic surveillance cameras over 75 sites. C, supply, installation, testing and commissioning of 45 enterprise enhanced long-term evolution sites, including 4,500 multimedia radio trunking and 500 vehicular mounted terminals. And D, centralized command and control center, including a main command and control center, a modern integrated emergency response management system, 7 sub-command centers, a traffic management and control center, and a monitoring bay at each of the 71 police stations and 1 police post. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am informed by the Commissioner of Police that the Safe City system has the capacity to store data for a period of at least 30 days on a 24-hour basis. After the 30 days loop, the older video footages are automatically overwritten by the latest ones. I am further informed by the Commissioner of Police that the period of 30 days is considered adequate and meets the requirements of the police force.
Duval.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. In an official document from Huawei about its global practice city solution in the Middle East, costed at $20 million, around $20 million and 820 million rupees, approximately, for the 1,200 cameras, inclusive of 6-month cloud storage capacity. Can the Honourable Prime Minister state if government spent 19 billion for 4,000 cameras and still 6-month cloud capacity? Can the Honourable Prime Minister enlighten the House about it?
Enlighten? Well, I have given the figures. Well, there has been a due diligence with regard to the implementation of this project, and it is a project for, I think, 20 years. So I don't see what more do I, if you have any specific question you want me to enlighten, I will do so. If you just ask me to enlighten, I think there's so much that I can say with regard to this project.
In a reply of B523 on May 2019, the former Prime Minister informed the House that the Safe City project has a facial recognition component. Can the Honourable Prime Minister confirm that this component has already been activated?
Yes, I know that. I'm not sure whether it is already operational. I don't think so. I don't think it is already operational. But I need to check, Mr. Speaker, sir, on this issue.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, sir, can the Honourable Prime Minister inform the House whether the CCTV recording for the city surveillance project, whether they can be modified, altered, deleted, and whether they have any security system to protect that? Thank you.
Well, no, Mr. Speaker, sir. In fact, no one can edit the footages of these recordings. The police officers and the sub-command centers can only view the video footages, while the police officer and the main command center can extract, of course, particular parts of the video footages when there is any, for example, any complaint, or it has to be communicated to authorized institutions, for example, like the court. But otherwise, you cannot tamper with these footages.
Honourable Jamal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Prime Minister mentioned about 7 sub-command centres. The Safe City project was scheduled to be fully operational by June 2019. Now, 21 months from that date, can we know out of the 7 sub-command centres, how many of them are fully operational?
Yes, the central division of QPIP, the installation is pending due to lockdown. The southern division, Vosbel, the installation is completed and is awaiting power for configuration. The Metro South division of Line Barracks, the installation is completed and UAT is completed. The Eastern division of FLAC installation is completed, and Western division Rosil, it is operational. The Northern division of Piton, awaiting relocation of ACs to start installation, and the Metro division, North division of Abercrombie, the MT is working with the contractor.
Prime Minister, given that the Safe City project has been exempted completely from the Data Protection Act, would you not agree that an urgent bill be presented to this House to ensure that all the variable and private footages that are taken by the cameras of Safe City are not used against our citizens, but for the protection of our citizens, and therefore have a special bill?
Mr. Speaker, sir, the Safe City project is not exempted completely from the Data Protection Act of 2017. No, you have to go and read what is there. There are certain provisions of the Data Protection Act to which the exemption applies. Let me remind the honourable member. Yes, you have been in government before. I believe 2009 you were in a government. I believe. And in that year, they implemented the CCTV camera surveillance project. And is the Honourable Leader of the Opposition aware that there are certain provisions of the Data Protection Act of 2004 that are equally exempted from from the project?
No comment.
So there is nothing unusual about it. You have done it before. The exemption applies under the new Act of 2017. There's no need for any specific legislation to be passed.
Last supplementary, Honourable Amans.
Mr. Speaker, as a global practice, Huawei offers a 6-month cloud storage to all his clients worldwide. In Mauritius, we have only 30 days of storage. The Minister just mentioned it. Can I find from him whether he intends to negotiate with Huawei to increase our storage capacity?
The honourable member must realise that to increase storage capacity means that we need to have more servers. And to have more servers, it means that we need to pay more to acquire bigger storage capacity. So we have to decide how much money we want to put in with regard to this project. Now, I am told that generally, I need to have asked for information, generally in other countries, 30 days is the normal and reasonable length of period. In some countries. But the Honorable Boulel is saying no.
No, forget him.
Forget him?
Forget him. There's no more. Continue with your reply.
I tried to forget him. Although he's not the leader of the opposition, I tried to forget him, but I see him. So, but Mr. Speaker, sir, he's coming back? You voulez rendre le tablier? Okay. So let me remind the future leader of the opposition that when he implemented the CCTV surveillance camera project, the storage capacity was and is still 30 days. So in this case, it was 30 days. It's okay. Now we implement a new project. 30 days is not enough.
The table has been advised that PQ B80, 81, and B82 have been withdrawn. PQ B116 also. Time over. PQs, Honorable Lachman Roy.
B85.
Mr. Speaker, sir, in response to the resurgence of local cases of COVID-19 since March 2021, government has taken a series of decisive measures to prevent the virus from spreading further. One of the steps announced is a national lockdown resulting in the suspension of inbound passenger flights to Mauritius. My ministry, including our missions overseas, has taken necessary actions to assist Mauritian nationals who are stranded or find themselves in difficult situations. On 17th March 2021, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs set up a help desk to ease the difficulties of our nationals abroad. The help desk started to operate on Thursday, 18th March, following a communique which was issued by my ministry on the 17th of March. To reassure the population, my ministry, through the help desk, continues to tender advice, provide information, and give moral support to Mauritians calling. Records are kept of calls received and a database of all information collected regarding Mauritians stranded overseas is being set up. The database includes pertinent information that will in due course assist my ministry and other government ministries in deciding future actions. To ensure that the ministry's database remains up to date, the Mauritius missions, consulates, honorary consuls, as and when needed, and Mauritians abroad contact ministry through the MFA consular at govmu.org email and the hotline specially created on the 18th of March for this unexpected situation. The help desk has received more than 200 calls and 200 mails which are attended to on a daily basis. With respect to part A of the question, Mauritians are currently stranded in diverse regions, including UK, France, Italy, Rhode Island, the Seychelles, Madagascar, India, USA, UAE, Ghana, Djibouti, South Africa, Australia, and Malaysia. Since the lockdown, sir, around 350 Mauritians stranded abroad have registered themselves with the help desk at my ministry. A breakdown region-wise would include the USA and Canada, Africa, Asia, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Seychelles, and La Réunion. And this total includes some Mauritians stranded on cruise ships. With regard to part B of the question, sir, some 72 patients and carers who were on medical treatment abroad were brought back on 27th March 2021. I understand that we still have 10 patients from India who have not yet completed their treatment and would be flown in on the next approved flight. I wish to inform the House that our missions overseas are currently reaching out to our Mauritian nationals in distress and are extending all possible assistance within the constraints of lockdown in their respective countries of accreditation. Through its communication network, my ministry is updating them of the situation, seeking their understanding and reassuring them that the government remains sensitive to their plight. My ministry is urgently working on a plan to facilitate the return of the stranded Mauritians at the earliest.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Can the Honourable Minister give a tentative date, maybe, of when the action plan might be implemented?
Well, the plan is being devised right now, Mr. Speaker. So we are coming up with this plan, which will take into account different issues. And the plan will be based, of course, on the priority of the distress cases, the students, and the medical cases, and taking also into consideration the availability of quarantine places here in the country.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister be more precise as to the assistance? Because you mentioned, the Minister mentioned all possible assistance being extended to stranded persons overseas. So can we know exactly what are those assistance that are being extended? Because some of them have run out of money, some of them become destitute, and they are in dire straits. So if Minister can inform the House.
As I said, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I thank the Honourable Member for this question. Our missions have been dispensing valuable services to our nationals abroad, and these services include their registration, their inclusion in the database. We liaise with authorities of the host country for the extension of visas with regard to the stranded Mauritians who have overstayed because of the lockdown. We intervene with various government and private stakeholders to facilitate accommodation, for example. We even negotiate rates with hotels and calling on their understanding for the difficulties being faced by our nationals. We facilitate the issue of travel documents for those whose passports have expired. We liaise with local authorities, including the police, in view of assisting our nationals who face special difficulties. We counsel, we comfort our nationals who are in a situation of anxiety and distress, and we even maintain contact with the cruise liners to ensure the welfare and safety of our nationals, both passengers or crew members.
The ministry, the special desk set up at the ministry, has been liaising with our diaspora, in different parts of the world, to come and assist those Mauritians who are stranded, because they are willing to help.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir, this is a good suggestion. But whenever we receive requests from the diaspora who offer help in terms of contacting the distressed Mauritians, we encourage them to do so, Mr. Speaker.
Another one? Next question.
B86.
Mr. Speaker, sir, in January 2021, government's approval was obtained for a national vaccination and deployment plan, which was prepared by my ministry in consultation with the World Health Organization, the Attorney General's Office, and the Ministry of Finance, Economic Planning and Development. The National Vaccination and Deployment Plan provides for the setting up of a COVID-19 vaccination committee. The terms of reference of the committee are to first make recommendations on vaccination policy and advise on all scientific and technical topics related to vaccines and immunization. The committee meets on a weekly basis to provide the Ministry on strategies to plan for the introduction of COVID-19 vaccines. The objectives of the committee are to recommend on choice of vaccines, safety and effectiveness of data, immunogenicity data on vaccine candidates, and constantly review and update on vaccines, and to oversee on priority groups to receive on vaccination. Mr. Speaker, sir, in reply to part A of the question, I'm informed that the chairperson of the National COVID-19 Vaccination Committee was appointed on 25th January 2021, while the members and secretary was appointed on 29th January 2021. With respect to terms and conditions of appointment, same will be approved by the Ministry of Public Service Administrative and Institutional Reforms. As regard to part C1 of the question, I'm informed that 9 meetings of the National COVID-19 Vaccination Committee have been carried out since January 2021. Mr. Speaker, sir, with your kind permission, I will be tabling a copy of the composition of the National COVID-19 Vaccination Committee, together with the qualifications of each member, as well as the date of last meeting held and the names of the members who attended same.
Monsieur le Président, jusqu'ici, nous ne savions pas grand-chose de ce Vaccination Committee, hormis qu'il était présidé par le docteur Jumai, alors que ce comité national relève d'une importance capitale, vu que c'est lui le comité, qui approuve l'utilisation des vaccins qui seront administrés aux Mauriciens. Je comprends donc qu'il s'agit de l'équivalent de la Food and Drug Administration américaine, et j'invite d'ailleurs notre Vaccination Committee à s'inspirer du site internet de la FDA. Le ministre peut-il préciser, parce que je n'ai pas bien compris dans sa réponse, les terms and conditions of appointment des membres de ce comité?
Mr. Speaker, sir, the terms of reference of the committee been making recommendation. Now, the objective are to recommend of choices. Mr. Speaker, sir.
Do you have the right to cross-talk like this? And at times you forget you're in Parliament. And you see, you're arguing with the chair. So, as I understand, terms of appointment. Terms and conditions.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I've already informed the House that the condition for appointment of a vaccination committee, that has been already given, and I'm going to list down the names of the vaccination committee so that they will know that how the vaccination committee is operating, because once...
Behave yourself, Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, sir.
This is not a way to address members of the House. You can address me like this, but not the others.
Mr. Speaker, sir, this is how our honourable members are behaving, cross-talking, making comments, and not allowing me to reply, to give my reply. The composition of the vaccination committee, I'll give the names. So the Dr. Z.J., he is senior advisor to the Prime Minister's office. He holds a doctorate en medicine, specialist in medicine interne and hepatogastroenterology. And then he has made 15 publications. The Dr. VP is the chairperson of MONITAG. MONITAG is the Mauritius National Immunization Technical Advisory Group, and she sits on the vaccination committee. This MONITAG is also responsible for the immunization of children. Now, the third one is the Director of the Health Service, Public Health. He is also part of that committee. The Director of the Laboratory Services, Dr. S.M., is part of that committee. Dr. P.L. is the consultant in charge of internal medicine. Dr. T.G. is the chairperson of the Pharmacovigilance Committee, and Dr. N is a specialist in infectious diseases. Dr. F.K. is the Regional Public Health Superintendent, Communicable Disease Control Unit. Mr. Speaker, sir, there is a lot of cross-talking. If members will behave...
Honourable members, I heard some voices.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir. So all these members, the doctors, they are responsible for the vaccination committee, and they advise which vaccine should the country take for vaccination, to vaccinate the population.
Mr. Speaker, I'll try to be very precise in order for the Honourable Minister to understand. The question that was put by the Honourable Member David is as follows. C, terms and conditions of appointment.
No, this is an argument.
So my question is...
Honourable Member, try to listen. You ask a permission, you ask the floor to ask a supplementary question and not to argue. If you have one, if you have two, put them.
Could he please inform the House why he has up to now refused to give the terms and conditions of appointment when the question was very explicitly put? Why is he hiding it?
Mr. Speaker, sir, in my reply, I said with respect to terms and conditions of appointment, same will be approved by the Ministry of Public Service, Administrative and Institutional Reforms. The Ministry of Health doesn't approve the terms of conditions. This is this ministry that has to approve the terms of conditions.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'll try to put another explicit question. May I know from the Honourable Minister whether any fee is being paid to each and every member of this National Vaccination Committee, and if so, may he tell us the amount of this fee?
This is not the way to behave in chamber. He's putting his question and you're turning and monitoring him.
Mr. Speaker.
Go ahead. I'm sorry for that. People embarrass you. Go ahead.
Let me rephrase it, Mr. Speaker, sir. May I know from the Honourable Minister, once again, whether any fee or any benefit is being paid to each and every member of his National Vaccination Committee, and if so, can he give the details?
Mr. Speaker, sir, no fee, no benefit is being paid to any members of the Vaccination Committee.
Order. Honourable Team, last question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. May I know from the Honourable Minister, before this COVID-19 vaccine committee advises the government on procurement of a vaccine that is not approved by WHO, does that committee get an advice from WHO as to why this vaccine has not yet been approved by WHO before they advise government to buy those?
Mr. Speaker, sir, the Vaccination Committee, they work with collaboration of different stakeholders. It's up to them to decide whose advice they are going to take.
Next question, David.
B87.
I'm informed that the Council of NCIF has approved that an amount of 485.3 million be provided to around 146 NGOs from January 2021 to support vulnerable groups. To date, out of 483.5 million, an amount of 238.9 million, representing a first installment, has already been disbursed to the NGOs. This represents 49.2% of the approved amount so far disbursed. Even during the lockdown period, NCIF has been responsive to the financial needs of its registered NGOs with a view to ensuring continuity of their services. Out of the 238.9 million disbursed, an amount of 20.8 million has been disbursed to 33 NGOs from 10th March 2021 to date. In addition to the above, NCIF has approved an additional grant of 425,000 in favor of NGO Action for Integral Human Development. This NGO will provide accompagnement and counseling to vulnerable people across the island during the lockdown through a hotline service. NCIF has also taken a series of measures to support vulnerable groups during the lockdown. They are as follows. NCIF has liaised with NGOs Caritas to make arrangements for food packs to be provided to 150 families in Canada. In fact, a survey was conducted by the police in that region, and it was found that around 150 families were in need of foodstuff. The food packs have been delivered to Albion Police Station to be distributed to the needy families. It is good to highlight that NCIF provides financial assistance to NGOs such as Appel, Caritas, and Association Père Laval des Sans-Abri, which cater for homeless persons. During the lockdown, NCIF has liaised with these NGOs to facilitate the vaccination of homeless persons across the island. So far, out of 103 homeless persons surveyed around the island, 51 have already been vaccinated. The vaccination exercise is still ongoing. NCIF has also liaised and assisted Caritas and Appel to make arrangements to provide meals to homeless persons during the lockdown. Appel has constituted a network of volunteers to arrange for the distribution of food to some 30 homeless persons on a daily basis in the morning and at night. Caritas is collaborating with 2 other NGOs for the provisions of 2 meals to homeless persons on a daily basis. NCIF acted as a facilitator for NGO to be provided with WAP facilities in order to enable them to carry out intervention on the field whenever necessary. NCIF also sent an email to the 418 NGOs registered with it on the next day of the lockdown to inform them that they could contact the foundation by mail for any pressing issues that may hinder their ongoing operation. Moreover, our government, through the COVID-19 Solidarity Fund, has provided support to vulnerable groups during the lockdown. On 19th March 2021, the COVID-19 Solidarity Fund authorized Caritas L'Île Maurice to use 6 million allocated by the COVID-19 Solidarity Fund to the NGO to provide food packs to around 3,000 vulnerable households during the current lockdown. NCIF is responsible for the monitoring of the implementation of the programs by Caritas L'Île Maurice to ensure that food vouchers are used for the purchase of basic food and sanitary items.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. May I ask the Honourable Minister whether she can table the list of NGOs having received CSR contributions since January 2021 with a corresponding quantum?
Yes, I don't have it with me, but I will do it in the course of today.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Et Madame la Ministre, vous parliez de food packs qui ont été distribués pendant ce Covid, le confinement, et dans les zones rouges. Est-ce que vous pouvez confirmer que des food packs ont été distribués dans la circonscription 15, 16 et 17 aussi? Et en quel endroit, si vous avez les renseignements?
Well, NCIF does not provide funding for the provision of food packs, but acts as a facilitator to identify NGOs who can arrange for the provision of food packs received from sponsors. So I have been told that 67 NGOs which are registered with NCIF have also provided food packs to vulnerable groups across the island, including constituency number 15, 16, and 17.
Mr. Speaker, Honourable Minister mentioned that she catered for food for 30, I say it again, 30 homeless persons only. Does she know how many homeless persons is there in the region of Port Louis? There are more than 200. How can she come here and say that she only provides food for 30 of them and is being proud of that? What are you going to do for all other persons that you do not provide any food?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I rely on this survey, which has been carried out by the police. We have received a list from the police that there are around 103 homeless persons across the island. You know, these persons, it is very difficult to lay hand on them because when you go at a particular spot, they might have moved to another one. So as I can't act without a report, so we act on the report provided by the police. And, well, I must seize this opportunity to thank NGOs for their strong support, engagement, and contribution. So the contribution of the NGOs means a lot to government, especially in these difficult times. So Caritas is doing a wonderful job. There are other NGOs also. So that's it.
One last supplementary.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Et lors du premier confinement, l'année dernière, le gouvernement, en association, Madame la Ministre, avec les ONG, avait organisé la distribution de packs de vivres. Est-ce que vous pouvez confirmer que pour ce présent confinement, donc le gouvernement n'est pas impliqué directement dans la distribution de food packs? C'est bien ça?
Yes, I understand your question, your point. Honorable members should understand that this year the situation is different compared to the lockdown of last year. You will, if I may recall you, so during the lockdown of last year, there were closure of shops, supermarkets, etc., and that's why immediate actions were taken by my ministry, by government, to provide food packs to the vulnerable because we are very much concerned, you know, to provide support to the vulnerable people. But this year, there has not been a closure of shops. It is only one day on Sunday. So on the next, yes, even in the red zone, I'm told that shops are open, so people can buy their provision. And as I have said, Mr. Speaker, so we are having, as I have said, and SIF does not provide fundings for food pack, but and SIF is liaising with many of the NGOs who are registered by it to see to it that vulnerable groups, vulnerable people who are in need of food packs are being given so.
Food pack. I suspend the sitting for 1.5 hours.